When Donald Trump was indicted, my argument was that he should not have surrendered. He should have simply said, look, file the paperwork, contact me in Florida, let me know what's moving forward. I'm not saying that Trump should have stood up and said, I will never answer this subpoena. He should have said, I don't know anything about it. They can file the paperwork. They can send it to Florida. Florida can get in touch with me. But I don't know what New York is doing or why they're doing it. This would have resulted in a standoff that I think Trump would have won. Instead, Trump said, no, I'm going to surrender. I'm going to come back down. Now, I guess it's entirely possible that I'm wrong and that they did reach out to Secret Service and said, we're indicting Donald Trump. We want him to come in for arraignment. And he said, sure, fine, okay. My attitude is still he should have said, file the paperwork with Florida for extradition. I'm not answering a political subpoena. Now we have breaking news. Trump set for quick New York return to give deposition in lawsuit brought by Letitia James. They're not going to stop. This will keep happening. And Donald Trump at some point is going to have to just say no. Here's the latest news. Donald Trump is set to make a quick return to New York to give a deposition in a lawsuit brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James. This will be the second time he will give a deposition in the case. The first one was in August last year when he refused to answer any questions, citing the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. At the time, Trump said the investigation was a politically motivated witch hunt against him. This will be the former president's first trip to New York since his arraignment last week on 34 counts of falsification of business records in a Manhattan criminal case related to hush money payments made before the 2016 election. Ms. James has sued the former president, his three eldest adult children, and a host of companies, organizations, and persons associated with his real estate and licensing business following a 3-year civil investigation into allegations of fraud. Civil investigation, my. Acts across more than 200 pages following interviews with 65 witnesses and reviews of millions of documents, the Attorney General alleges the former president and his business empire falsely inflated the value of his net worth by billions of dollars in an effort to gain tax benefits and other benefits from insurers and financial institutions. Ms. James said the twice impeached president cheated all of us by inflating his net worth to unjustly enrich himself and to cheat the system. Now hold on. This is the most ridiculous thing ever. You lose money if you claim you have more. Now, I get it. There are certain things you can do by inflating the value of an asset or deflating it. Sure. Arthur Engeron, the judge in the case, said last month, this case is complex, but it's not complicated. Essentially, it all boils down to whether Trump's statements of financial interest are true or false. The civil case is scheduled to go on trial October 2nd. The judge has rejected repeated attempts by Trump's attorneys to push that date back. There is one thing happening here. One. They are targeting Donald Trump in an effort to jam him up and make it impossible for him to run for office. They are going to require him to go to New York on October 2nd to testify, to be in this case. They're going to bring him back in December for a criminal case. And now we have this from Yahoo News. Trump aide Stephen Miller appears before Washington grand jury. This will not stop. This is why I think the polls are fake. They're putting out these polls that show that Donald Trump is actually down. And if an election were held today, Biden would probably win in several key states. I don't believe it. I mean, Biden will probably win in certain states for sure, like New York, Illinois, California. But I think Trump's actually doing better than they want to admit. I think a lot of these polls are bunk BS. And the reality is people are fed up. Now, I think it is fair to say that maybe Ron DeSantis would do better than Trump. That's true in terms of voting and the polls. But I'm not so sure that's what we need as a country right now. So perhaps we do just need a Donald Trump. But back to the story at hand. What we are seeing is a massive effort to jam up Donald Trump, his campaign, and stop him from winning. The fact that they're going after Stephen Miller, the fact that there's a second grand jury, and there's probably more. You've got Georgia as well. They're going to keep smacking him and with charges to make him fly around the country to stop him from rallying. He's got to go to New York twice. He's going to have to answer grand jury indictments in Washington, D.C. Because I'll make it simple for you. Do you think a grand jury would in D.C. is going to side with Trump? You'd have to be insane to think that. D.C. is absolutely, for no reason, for any reason, they're going to come out and they're going to be like, yeah, Trump should be indicted. You could come out and say, did Donald Trump make a ham sandwich with mustard instead of mayo? Indict. They'll make up any reason to go after him. Then he's going to have to go to Georgia, and it's going to keep happening. Here's what Yahoo News reports. They say, Stephen Miller, a top White House aide to former President Donald Trump, appeared before a federal grand jury in D.C. on Tuesday. They say Miller's appearance came after federal appeals court on April 4th rebuffed Trump's request to block grand jury testimony by several former top administration advisors, a group that reportedly included Miller. Trump had unsuccessfully raised a challenge on executive privilege grounds before a district judge, which he absolutely has. Amazing. But why would D.C. agree with Trump? Miller, accompanied by two attorneys, did not speak with reporters as he entered the courthouse and walked into the grand jury suite. The grand jury has been hearing evidence in Justice Department Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation into efforts by Trump and his allies to overturn the 2020 election. Miller was a close advisor to Trump during the post-election period and featured prominently in the final report of the Special Congressional Committee probing the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. Smith is also overseeing an investigation into mishandling classified documents recovered from Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. Well, I'll be. You've got multiple cases in Washington, D.C. How about that? Miller previously appeared before a federal grand jury in D.C. in November and December. And they say, read more Bloomberg, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's Yahoo is just rehosting the Bloomberg story. Welcome to modern politics. This is it. We saw a Democrat in North Carolina that quit the Democratic Party, became a Republican, giving the Republicans a supermajority. Now, that's a victory that I think needs to be pointed out when we're talking about these stories, because I think it's fair to say the Democrats are willing to do whatever it takes, no matter how wrong, no matter how evil, to push what they want to push. I mean, take a look at this. From Reason.com, let's zoom in on this one right here. Trump commuted his sentence. Now the Justice Department is going to prosecute him again. Philip Esformez's case is a story about what happens when the government violates some of its most basic promises. Yeah, they're basically saying Trump was illegitimate. That's their claim. They've always claimed it. And they want to erase anything he's done. They're going to do everything in their power to make sure he can't run. And here we are. When Philip Esformez walked out of prison in December 2020, he'd spent 4.5 years behind bars, the majority of which were in solitary confinement. He reportedly weighed about 130 pounds. He was in many ways a broken man. But Esformez's luck was changing. He had recently received clemency from Donald Trump, giving him the chance to rebuild his life after paying a debt to the country. That fortune has quickly soured. In a move that defies historical precedent, the Department of Justice under Joe Biden is using a legal loophole to re-prosecute Esformez's case, raising grave questions about double jeopardy, the absolute power of the clemency process, and the weaponization of the criminal legal system against politically expedient targets. A former executive overseeing a network of skilled nursing and assisted living facilities, Esformez was arrested in 2016. The prosecutors, who were found to have committed substantial misconduct throughout the case, alleged he paid doctors under the table to send patients his way and subsequently charged Medicare and Medicaid for unnecessary treatments. The government held him without bond in the years leading up to his trial, placing him in solitary. He was ultimately found guilty of money laundering and related charges, as well as bribing regulators to give him notice of upcoming inspections so he could attempt to obscure shoddy conditions at those facilities. But Esformez was not convicted of the most serious charges leveled against him. The government failed to convince a jury, for example, that he committed conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and wire fraud. So his 20-year sentence handed down by U.S. District Judge Robert N. Scola may appear grossly disproportionate to his convictions, until you realize the judge explicitly punished Esformez for charges on which the jury hung. That is not an error, quote. When somebody gets sentenced at the federal level, they get sentenced on all charges, even the ones they're acquitted on, as long as they get convicted on one count, says Brett Tolman, the former U.S. attorney for the District of Utah, who is now the executive director of Right on Crime. The defendant, as much as you might not like him, do you think he should be punished 2 or 3 times for the same conduct? I don't find anybody who thinks that's fair. Esformez is just one person, and he's perhaps a convenient bullseye at which the Biden admin and Attorney General Merrick Garland can aim, as many on the left have a particular sort of ire for white-collar crime. But it is difficult to overstate the implications of his case for the broader public, regardless of partisan affiliation. While there are a lot of people who disagree with how Donald Trump handled his clemencies, it's his absolute right as president to issue commutations and pardons, and I think that's an important right to protect. Simply put, they will do anything to stop Donald Trump, to undo the things he's done, to retry people, defying historical precedent. This is what you're up against. Don't forget it. A lot of people are saying, why didn't Trump pardon the January 6 defendants? I'll say this. Many of them should not be pardoned. Now, certainly some of them should be treated more fairly, but the people who are violent and attacking cops, I think, should be criminally charged. Some of these people should have been pardoned, absolutely, because they wandered into a building confused. For sure. Donald Trump's team said it had just happened. They didn't even know what was going on. How could they pardon people before they even knew what people were being accused of? Fair point. It takes time and it's difficult. But I'll tell you this. If Trump did pardon them, they would just recharge them for something else. Trump would have to issue this absurd, massive blanket pardon on all federal counts, but you can't even do that. Because then what? Someone commits a crime and they're like, I pardoned him in advance. This is the point. If Trump does not win, I don't think DeSantis is going to do enough. Trump needs to win to solidify the things he did change. And there are many good things that he did, particularly with foreign policy. And they seek to jam him up and prevent it from happening. Well, here you go. This is the point I was making. I made before. Trump giving in is a surrender, which just emboldens them, and they will not stop. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.